Hey, good day to you. This is Jeffrey again, and we are starting. It is chapter 8 in the book, but the video is chapter 5 or video 5. And we're going to talk today about learning because every time we learn something new, we're adding something to our brain matter. And if we begin to think about what we learn, we're causing our brain to fire in new sequences, new patterns, and new combinations and such. And this causes our brain to work differently. So, in this way, we're quite literally changing our mind because the mind is the brain in action. Now, we've already been through the linking the same thoughts every day kind of topic. So now we can actually say that new thoughts should lead us to new choices, right? And these new choices are going to lead to new behaviors, and the resulting new behaviors should create for us new experiences. Now, these new experiences, they can create new emotions, and these new emotions can inspire new thoughts, and this is real evolution, the evolution that we never learned about in school. But the difficulty in it all is this: the process of change requires that we become very conscious of our own consciousness, right? That we become conscious of our conscious self. So there's an old self and there's a new self. Have you ever heard in the Bible where it refers to your former manner of life, how we're to lay it aside or lay aside the old self, and that we should be, quote, be renewed in the spirit of the mind and put on the new self, unquote? I can't remember really right now which verse that is, but I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it. That's kind of like what we're talking about here. It goes back to the whole "we must be born again" thing to create a new self. Over time, we can become unconsciously addicted to an emotion, like the drama in our lives, for instance. I mean, have you ever known somebody that's not quite happy unless they're telling juicy stories about somebody? Or do you know anybody that can't seem to be happy unless they're eagerly explaining, why their life is this way or why it's that way or why things unfold the way they do? These folks are addicted to that specific kind of drama. Or more specifically, they're addicted to the chemical cocktails, the drugs that their body is providing when they're in that dramatized state surrounding their experiences. So while in that state, our thoughts are equal to the emotional state being reflected in our behavior. All right? They're always going to be. It becomes a cycle, and so it goes. We think the same thoughts and demonstrate the same behavior by doing whatever it is that we're doing. And it's those thoughts that have us continually looking for that next fix. You know what I mean? That next high that we're going to get from the emotion we feel when we complain, when we go, backbite or murmur about people, or go check our Facebook or our blogs or our phone text or whatever it is that we're doing. Whatever it is that we're doing that's going to give us that emotion that's going to feed what we're used to having. For instance, when we think thoughts associated with guilt and depression, the longer we do it, the less we're going to want to get up and do anything about it or do anything new and different, to be sure. You've heard things like attracts like, right? Well, that's especially true for thoughts. As soon as we think a particular type of thought, a moment later, we're going to have another thought just like it, then another. And if we keep that going, within about 2 minutes, we're going to have a momentum rocking around that first idea. So going back to our thought of depression, it's no wonder why we'll lose inspiration, right? But if we become conscious of it, if we become aware that we're in that state and we can look at it objectively, we can then decide right then and right there not to be thinking about those things. But it's not going to be easy trying to break that mold either. I mean, we've all been there, right? For the first few hours, everything's great. We made a decision, we're following through, life is good. But let's not forget, the body was conditioned to be that way. And it took time, and we got used to the chemical continuity between the brain and the body going on. There was a steady flow of chemicals coming into the body that it loves. And we are very accustomed to having it, and it's no longer there. So guess what happens? Well, the body wants to get back to that place of comfort and predictability, while the whole time the mind is telling you, not happening. I don't like being that way, and you are no longer the boss. There's a new sheriff in town, so to speak. So we start to experience a bit of tug of war, and the body starts to generate signals back to the brain that provides ready-made reasons why we need to go back to acting the same way that we previously did. Again, that's where the rubber meets the road. Because the hardest part about making and keeping the change is found in not making the same choices that we made before. Because the moment we decide that we're not going to think that way, the same way we did before, that we're not going to make those same choices or act that way, and we're not going to live by that emotion, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. To say the least, it's not going to feel good. It will feel bad, and it will feel uncertain, okay? And it's not going to be familiar, and there will be unpredictability. But take heart. The moment we feel uncomfortable, we just stepped into the new possibility, and from there, we can create the change. And if we're like most people, as soon as we get uncomfortable, we're going to do an about face and head right back to the things that feel right or familiar. That's when the state of mind and the body go right back to where we were before, and we start thinking, now this feels better, right? Well, in fact, this doesn't feel right, but it does feel familiar. So, when we talk about going from the old to the new self, we're referring to the changes that cause the neurological, the chemical, biological, hormonal, and even genetic death of the old self. The relative void that we experience, that place of uncertainty, the unknown, as it were, is the perfect place for us to create from. Becoming comfortable there is key to deciding who we want to be and how we want to move forward. And this is to say, in this unknown place, we can create a future that's not in the known, but it's in the unknown. So from there, we get to decide what thoughts we'll start having and what behaviors we want to actually demonstrate. And the mere act of mentally rehearsing who we want to be begins to install the neurological circuits in our brains structurally, so the brain starts to look like the experience has already occurred. That means the brain has already linked up the circuitry that we need to no longer be living in the past and instead be living in the future. So if we really thought we could change who we are, or at the very least how we're expressing who we are, what would be the greatest expression that we could accomplish to be in sync with the best version of ourselves that we could possibly be? Can we really teach our bodies, emotionally speaking, what that expression would be and what that future feels like now? Well, if we can promote the emotional state ahead of the actual experience, the emotion of wealth or prosperity, of happiness, etc., then we can. Alternatively, if we can produce an elevated feeling of gratitude for the things that we want, then that'll work too. This is because gratitude for something signifies that we've already received that thing. You may recall, we need an intention and we need an elevated emotion to put the creative process in motion. So, for instance, if we wanted a new set of tires for a new car, that would be an intention. By saying this, we're saying that we have set our intention by making a desire for a new set of tires a dominant thought in our mind, right? Now, if we can achieve the feeling of gratitude concerning those tires, if we can foster the feeling, the emotion of achieving that intent, as if we already had the tires before they show up in our experience, that is the elevated emotion. So, we want something that through our thought and our desire we're asking for, and we're already feeling the emotion of having it, which means we're believing that we actually have it. And that is how we create. In the Bible, in Mark 11:24, Jesus was talking to his followers and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm telling you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you've received them and they'll be given to you. So in essence, our body is the unconscious mind, and it does not know the difference between an actual experience that creates an emotion and an emotion that we create by thought alone. To our bodies, these things are the same. This is because emotions are the language of the body and thoughts are the language of the mind. So then, what is going on when our body has an emotion created while we're thinking thoughts that have to do with only living in the future instead of reliving emotional content related to the experience in the past? Is it possible to believe in a future that we haven't felt through our experiences? One that we haven't felt through our physical senses, but we've thought about enough that it feels like it's already occurred? Well, the scientists say yes. Science says we can change our brain just by thinking about things differently. So this means we should be able to select a new possibility for our reality that already exists potentially in the quantum field, right? Well, as such, we could start to emotionally embrace the new reality to such a degree that our body would be the unconscious mind and it begins to believe that it's living in a future reality because of the vision and elevated feeling we have in the present moment, so that it's sending a signal for new genes to act in new ways. So that our body now begins to create a change that looks like what we're thinking and feeling has already occurred. If our brain and body are physically changed, then there's obviously going to be some physical evidence of that change. When that change occurs and makes our brain look like the experience has already happened, then we can breathe easy because you can bet that experience is on the way and it's going to find us. But I'll tell you, like I've told others, every time I've ever thought I had something figured out, every time I just knew how something was going to happen or how it was going to be made manifest, I was wrong. And even more than that, every time something did happen, God seemed to always provide it in a way that had never even entered my mind. So we can rest assured that experience is going to come in a way that we don't expect. It will surprise us. More than likely, it's going to leave us in awe. I know that many times it left me in absolute awe. But at some point, we'll realize that what we did on the inside produced an effort outside of us. And when we understand the things we did with mind and emotion that caused the changes produced in our physical experiences, I will guarantee we're going to get excited, and like Dr. Dispenza says, we're going to start paying real close attention to what it was we were doing so that we can do it again. That's pretty powerful stuff, and everybody on the planet can do it. We just have to change. We have to break away from being our old self while becoming somebody new. As said in neuroscience, we prune old neural connections and sprout new ones. Once we stop memorizing emotions for storage in the body, we can recondition ourselves to a new mind and a new emotion. In other words, we need to unprogram our brain. I never thought that I'd be an advocate for losing one's mind, but that's what we got to do if we're going to create a new one. Become conscious of those unconscious thoughts and decide to exhibit behaviors that belong in our future. In other words, we can select the thoughts we want to think or that we don't want to think, and so can decide if there's something that belongs with us in our future or not. Think of it like this. If I want to find love and feel fulfillment, then every time I think about a breakup or about, sadness at being single or something, when those things come to mind, I need to push them aside, replacing them with visions of us being happy in a relationship or envisioning and feeling the emotion of being with someone. By doing this, we're not calling a similar pattern or event into our experience through feeling emotions of the past. We're creating a roadmap for a predictable future because we're training our body and mind to look as though the new experience has already happened. When we can think and feel as if an experience has already taken place, then that experience is going to find us. It will come to us. That means that we can't be sitting around waiting for healing to feel wholeness. Or, for those of us wanting to be wealthy, we can't wait for wealth to show up in order to feel that wealth. We have to feel wealthy first and have the feelings that come with it, and then abundance is going to show up in our experience. We have to feel loved before the new love will show up in our experience, and we have to feel the empowerment, that's the elevated emotion of the success, to have the success that we want. We have to have the thoughts of wholeness and feelings of wholeness before our healing occurs. It's not just thoughts and it's not just emotion that make these things happen. Our thoughts and feelings together create a state of being, and our state of being draws these things to us. Remember, when our brain and body are literally changed to look like the event has already occurred, that's when that event is going to find us. And the way that we do that is by inciting a vision in our mind, creating that picture of what we want, and creating the emotion that goes with that picture of what we want in our mind, and studying on it, focusing on it, concentrating on it until we can actually feel that we know that that is on the way or it's already here. that closes out this video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about how we can think greater than our environment.